Finally, what we've all been waiting for so long, Tenet is finally here, and I fortunately saw it on the day it came out over here, which is the 26th. So to anyone who's watching who's in America, where it obviously hasn't come out yet, don't worry, because this is a spoiler-free review. If you didn't understand what this movie is about by the trailers, well, this IMDb synopsis isn't really going to help you, but it'll give you a clearer understanding. So fighting for the survival of the entire world, a protagonist journeys through a twilight world of international espionage on a mission that will unfold in something beyond real time. It really kind of does sum it up, but there's a lot more to it, so maybe you have to see for yourself to fully understand. So without further ado, we're going to jump straight into the positives about this movie, and just in general, this whole movie is very, very mind-blowing. Similar to Inception in that sense, I am aware. They are both by the same director. As things play out, you know, things can be jaw-dropping, just like in any film, but the way that they explain it and they actually somewhat make sense just adds a bit more realism to that. Makes it even more jaw-dropping when you watch it. And when I say jaw-dropping, there was this scene which took place for about 5 minutes, and my mouth wasn't shut the whole entire thing. It was absolutely stunning with some of the things it pulled off. The funny thing about this movie is I understood everything when I was watching it. You know, by the end of it, I knew how it all worked, but when my parents asked me what this movie was about afterwards, I really struggled to come up with an answer. Even now, a day after I'd seen it, I still couldn't really give you a proper synopsis for it without it being written by someone else. It's really one of those movies where you have to see it for yourself. You can't just judge where you want to see it off the synopsis or not. Just, you have to make of it what you will. But for me, I had an absolute blast, and as I mentioned, it had some really stunning scenes, just like Inception. Inception had this one mind-blowing thing with the rotating corridor, but some of the scenes in this were just far superior to that. With all this inverted stuff, whether that's an object or a human, just looked all very cool, very real. I won't be able to tell you if there was special effects in this movie because everything looked so real and everything looked so fantastic. Sometimes it can really mess with your head with everything in reverse. You know, when I came out the cinema, I kept thinking I was seeing stuff in reverse, and I was very delayed with my conversation because I felt like I was tripping on some shrooms or something. You know, the action here was pretty standard. You know, it was an average car chase, there was an average hand-to-hand combat or whatever, but just mixing in all this inverted action just made it so unique and so special, and something that people will remember for many years. And I think it's one of those movies where it over time becomes a classic. I don't know if it will be as appreciated nowadays as we're going through a bit of a pandemic, and the last thing on some people's minds is going to the cinema to have a good time, so it's really unfortunate it came out this time. But in the next few years, when hopefully everything dies down, people can acknowledge this movie as a true phenomenal movie. And I mentioned CGI, I couldn't tell what was what. One thing I did know that was real was the plane crash. Christopher Nolan actually crashed a plane in this movie. I don't know if it was because he just prefers actual stunts over CGI, or if it just cost less, but even so, his dedication towards his movies, all the details, just to get it as feeling as real as possible, you really have to give the man credit. There wasn't really a performance in which I didn't really enjoy. I thought they were all pretty good. All the actors did their part well, but if we want to have a more in-depth talk about their characters, we'll do that in a sec in the cons. I know it was intentional from Christopher Nolan to make our protagonist feel a bit like a mystery as he's an agent. He couldn't even get a name from him. Like this, his characters didn't have depth at all. There were some who had their little moments, but especially our main character, we didn't even get a character name. We had no idea who he was. So, you know, it's fine if Christopher Nolan wants to go in that direction with his movies where he doesn't give his characters depth, he just has them in there for the story's sake. But if you have moments where you expect us to actually care about the characters, then you're not going to get that as much, because if we don't feel like we know them, if they don't feel like they're an actual person, if we don't feel like we can like them, then we're not going to care if anything happens to them. And fortunately, I had that with some of the characters in this. Some of them I was really rooting for, but like the main character, we didn't even get a name from him, so I couldn't care too much if anything happened to him. So if you haven't gathered, the concept we're dealing with in this movie is very complex. It could take 2 viewings to fully understand everything and to process it all, to enjoy it as much as you can. But at times I was left very confused with this movie, mainly in the first half. The first half of the movie was pretty much this normal spy mission with some elements of this inverted stuff that we have seen. We had been told about it briefly in the beginning, and I thought, oh, okay, that will be all that we know about it. And then as things go on, I got really confused about it. Things seemed too normal. It seemed like this inverted stuff was a side plot. Even though it was all resolved in the second half, things were explained better. We we understood it better. I was very confused at times for this first half of the movie, but once they did fully explain everything and I understood it all, this movie did not hold back, so I can't complain too much, but it would just be nice if we understood it fully earlier on. So Kenneth Branagh was the villain, I guess you could say, in this movie, where Christopher Nolan goes for all these realistic tones, mixing a bit of sci-fi into it. Kenneth Branagh felt like a very over-the-top, cartoonish comic book villain. Some of his motives, some of his dialogue, don't take anything away from Kenneth Branagh's performance, because I think he did a good job, but the character, the way it was written, some of his dialogue wasn't too great. It wasn't a very menacing villain. I didn't find him too intimidating like I have in other Christopher Nolan movies. But yeah, just to make that clear, no problem with Branagh's performance. Now, this could be in the cinema that I watched it in, but I've looked and I've seen many people say the same thing. Mainly in the first scene, the score, as much as it was a great score, really was at a much higher volume than the dialogue, and I really struggled to understand what they were saying. I literally was concentrating so hard and I couldn't understand it, but thankfully it all got better. But just in the beginning there, I had a very rough time trying to hear it. Maybe if they could have fixed that up a bit, then I wouldn't have had to say this, but many people have acknowledged it as well. I was going to let it slide thinking it might have been the cinema, but since I saw other people saying it, I thought it was right to include it. Now, this isn't really much of a complaint, as I would have gone that way myself if I was directing this movie. But some things by now with Christopher Nolan just get a bit predictable with all these twists and reveals. You know, as I said, it was still a good reveal, but I just saw it coming. So if he could have disguised it maybe a little bit better. I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit too picky, but nonetheless, I still had a great time with this movie. For me, Tenet was well worth the wait and is a must-see in cinema. You just don't get this thrill like you do watching it at home with movies like this. They belong on the big screen, and you can understand why Christopher Nolan didn't want to send it to digital release. The movie uses its expensive budget very well and is the perfect movie to try and draw fans back into the cinemas. However, let's just hope that this whole virus doesn't outshine the quality of this movie, as for me it's not quite as good, but it is just a little bit below Inception. For me, after much thought, I'm going to give Tenet an 8 out of 10, and just like many Christopher Nolan movies, it is a must-see. So there it is, done. We've gone through all of Christopher Nolan's movies, reviewed them, and in a couple of days, I'll reveal my ranking of his movies. Feels like I've been doing this series for months. We're finally here, we've got one of our series down. Now we just need to finish the X-Men series. But thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope you enjoyed my Christopher Nolan reviews. If you did, please like and subscribe and leave a comment of what you thought of Tenet if you have seen it. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see you in my next video, and thank you for watching.